Also, I'd like to know you can join us, channel tt.tv at Roku TV. Also, please log in on facebook.com and youtube.com. As you know, this community in the Bronx is in the New York has been center of the pandemic, and we suffer as a New York the most. And among the New York, also Bronx, we suffer tremendously. And Mr. Luis Sepúlveda is not only our senator, he's been a part of every level of the community, and he was involved beyond his limit, as we know. But I will discuss about his activity of his office first, then we will talk about the other issues. So, if I may, Mr. Senator, I know we all experienced a huge loss. We lost our loved one, communities. Everything was a very bad situation, and we will wish we could talk earlier, but here we came, even though the end, little bit good situation from the pandemic time, but still we've been experiencing some spike here and there. Please share with us the activities of your office over this last several months of this hardship time.
Well, one of the things that we do now is when we speak to a lot of people in the community for the last, since March, since COVID really attacked New York State and New York City, we've gone often throughout our communities in the Bronx, and there's a lot of food insecurity. There's still a lot of poverty in this county. There's still a lot of issues with health. We're at the bottom of the list. And so that's a bad combination for people to get sick. If you don't have food, clearly you're going to get sicker. So we made it our mission to make sure that we feed as many people as we have, and we have served thousands of pounds of food throughout the community. We have delivered thousands of pounds of food. Another thing that we did to help this community is bring more face masks. I was fortunate that because I have a working relationship with the Taiwanese government and the Taiwanese Chamber of Commerce, I was fortunate to be able to secure, the first time they gave 250,000 masks to New York City. They continue to give. Just recently, the Taiwanese Chamber of Commerce and the Taiwanese government gave me another, I think, 5,000 to 10,000 masks. We have gone throughout the county of the Bronx, train stations, schools, libraries, any place, restaurants, any place that we see people, and we give out the masks. We encourage people to give out the masks. That has had a huge impact, I believe, not just me, but because there are other colleagues of mine in government are doing the same thing. But the fact that we've taken it seriously and that we have pushed to make sure that people have face masks, I think has made a difference in keeping the rate of infection low. Look, we see a little spike here and there, but from where we were at the beginning, where so many people died in this community, people that were in bad health, people that are friends of ours, people that are family, so many people died because they weren't prepared for what was coming, because we didn't have enough information. And unfortunately, some of these people could have been saved with just a simple mask. And so that information didn't get out sometimes, and you have a president who makes a mockery of wearing a mask rather than encouraging people. Now we also did, we had to change our hours and our structure in the office because we have restrictions on how many people can come to our constituent service office. So we have been servicing people anywhere between 50 to 65 people a day. They call us in, we make appointments, but they come in, we try to help them with whatever they need assistance with. You know, we have restrictions again because of the number of people that come in, but you can always call our office and we'll continue to service. So, you know, we've serviced people mostly through phones, some in-person appointments, but we keep that to the minimum to keep people safe. And we're going to continue to do that throughout this whole process. I mean, there's so much poverty in this county. There's so much need in this county. You know, you have people that are deciding whether to buy a meal or get insulin. I mean, it's this terrible economic situation in this county where you're going to have, I believe right now you have about 24% unemployment. And so that's going to create a major problem in this county, and we're going to have to do a lot to spur the economy, and we don't have another terrible recession in the Bronx.
Well, thank you. Speaking of economy, and I just want to follow up with this. So, my question is, do you believe that our governor and mayor did a great job as being some part of the community's belief or political parties' belief, regardless, despite the mainstream media criticism that policy of Governor Cuomo has killed the economy for New York City forever. Mostly the restaurant industry is destroyed because of his bad decision. Do you agree?
No, I don't agree with that. When COVID hit New York State, we were hit harder than anyone else. We didn't know what we were doing. It was a learning process. We had a president that knew how infectious and serious it was, yet he failed to inform the public. You had a president who did not have a national plan, despite the prior administration leaving him a manual. Because it came from Obama, he ignored it. He disbanded an office that dealt with these kinds of pandemic. He defunded it. So at the federal level, there was zero preparation. In fact, there was denials from the president and keeping information from the general population. It came to New York. You have so many travelers, and it came, despite what the governor says, it didn't come from China. It came from Europe into this country. But we were ill-prepared for the unknown. Now, since the outbreak, since we have stabilized the state, I think the governor has done enough, has done work to make sure that our rates are what they are now. You know, he was encouraging people from the beginning to wear masks. He was taking some action in areas that weren't paying attention to some of the protocols. So, look, there's no perfection here. There was a lot of unknowns. You could criticize him perhaps on the nursing homes. That's an area where he gets criticism, absolutely. But once the governor understood and he allowed, you know, his scientists, his doctors, his professionals to help essentially guide them, to listen to the CDC, once the governor got his footing, I think his policies are the reason why, a great reason why we are where we are now.
But still, our situation with the nursing home and the hotel industry and tourism industry and is so bad. What do you say? Those 75%, the reports say 75% restaurant owner is unable to pay the rent right now. I know we're worrying about this tenant who will leave, but this is a huge thing. And also, a lot of people complaining the loved one. Because of the policies, the older people in the home care was days after days. They died with the careless because of this policies work. So how are you going to defend the 75% people whom restaurant owner cannot pay the rent?
Well, first of all, in terms of the nursing home, I have not defended his policies. I said that if there's one area where he can get criticism is in the nursing homes. But as a big picture overall, he has stabilized the health component of the state. We're not talking about the economy. The economy is going to be, it's going to take major steps and major creativity to get us back where we were. Now, you mentioned the hotel industry. Clearly, because of COVID, you had vacancies in the hotels. It was a disaster. It was an economic disaster that really started from Washington. But one thing you can do, for example, with the hotels, is you can give them variances for single room occupancies. So people can get, you know, they can live in a one bedroom apartment if they have to, and not violate the certificate of occupancy laws. You can do that also with a small owner. Let them put occupants in areas that normally you don't. Let them get single occupancy, one bedroom apartments. There are ways of working with the real industry on a temporary basis to allow that to happen. So that's one area that I think can save the hotel industry in the state. Take all these rooms now, you know, rent them out as single occupancy rooms for longer than what's allowed in the hotels, And you'll see people moving in there and stabilizing some of these structures, some of the buildings where the hotels are built. Workforce development is going to be a big part of what we have to do. We have to retrain people for jobs that have become popular because of COVID. You know, who would have thought that, you know, you look at the outdoor, with the restaurants, the limitations.
Uber Eats also.
Exactly, Uber Eats. But now you're seeing certain trends in outdoor restaurants, and the mayor has said this is going to be something permanent. So I think that's going to be helpful to the economy. So what you're seeing is now that you have to have creative ideas about how you're going to fix it. You can't get stuck in the mud. Industry's changing, and you have to change with it.
I just want to touch base a little bit. So you agree with the policy, the mayor policy of the school, the way it's going right now?
No, I have not. I have not been in agreement. If you ask me, I think that.
And also, do you agree with this teacher union position that they demand? They have a list of demands they want, and they're still threatening the protest, but they still, I think, it's a fighting situation.
You mean with the teachers' unions?
Teacher unions, yeah.
Well, first of all, with the mayor's situation, look, I would not have opened the schools yet. I would have been more hesitant.
That's what against the teacher union for. Also.
Right. But the mayor obviously believes that we have placed the virus in our knowledge of the virus is such that if there is some sort of infection, then you can lock down right away and change the structure. You have less teachers. But, you know, as of now, it hasn't been a massive outbreaks in the public schools. But that's because they've kept they have now fewer students, and they have certain protocols to protect. But I am at odds with opening up the schools. I think we should have waited till January. You also mentioned small homeowners. Look, obviously they're suffering financially. There's certain moratoriums on mortgages, state chartered banks that I know the governor has issued, and people can't pay the rent. So what I believe is happening is the following. The governor was waiting to see if the federal government was going to have another relief package. He didn't want to put any policy, any budgetary principle or policy before us, because why would he do that? And then the president could say, well, you already have this amount of money, I'm not going to give you more. So I think the governor was waiting for the president to act with the Senate to bring another relief package.
Thank you, Senator. I want to move to the next topic, but before that, I want to take a question from Facebook since I don't want to wait on this. Yeah. You can answer very shortly. Someone just commented, one of our viewers, saying that we don't see Louis Vai more often to our community anymore like before. What do you want to say?
Well, when I was, and by the way, I've been in Bangla Bazaar, Starling Avenue. The last 2 weeks, I've been there at least 7 times. But I go very often to a restaurant. Khalil Biryani is one of my favorite restaurants in the world. But what people, some of my friends in the Bengali community have to understand is that now, when I was there earlier in my career, I was an assembly person. Now I'm a state senator, so I represent 3 times the number of people. And I have to go throughout all these communities and talk to people like I do. But the last couple of weeks, I've spent a lot of time on Starling Avenue.
Thank you. I'm sure our other viewer listen to you. So here a line I'm going to read to you. Until I declare them no longer in effect, the eviction. So that's what the Governor Kumo said. Until he says so, there will be no eviction for any tenant. And this has been pronunciation again and again, no eviction, from Governor, from Ocasio, and from other things. And I saying, see, my question to you is, eviction is a legal process. Right. No, I cannot, as a landlord, just cannot start the eviction. There should be a ground for it. Even though if I go to court, the judge is the one who's going to do it anyway. So this is a due legal process when he needed to do it. Even if COVID-19 caused eviction to slow, I'm sure judge will decide this. So this way people know that, I mean, this legal process is fair to both sides, tenant and landlord. But you coming out of nowhere just saying no eviction, like you overriding everything. Don't you send a mixed message to somebody who think, oh, no eviction, so I don't have to pay? So who's getting victimized by that?
Well, look, we passed housing laws for COVID a few months ago that dealt with these kinds of issues. We have worked around or with the moratorium so that people who cannot pay the rent because of COVID are not evicted from their homes. Now, the landlords will be allowed to secure a monetary judgment if a tenant is living there and is working and just decides not to pay the rent. The tenant is not going to get away with that. The packages that we pass are going to protect those who are seriously financially hurt by COVID. So if you're a tenant and you can establish to a judge, and we've given the judges in housing court the guidelines, if you can establish that your financial situation because of COVID led you to not be able to pay your rent, the landlord could still sue for the rent. He just cannot get what's called a possessory judgment, meaning a marshal can't go there and evict you. But that's only if you can show that you've been impacted by COVID. So there's this impression that with the law the way we've passed it, that people can just say, I'm not going to pay rent and get away with it. Well, that's not the case. There's going to be relief for the tenants eventually, I believe, in the way either a state, we put $100 million a few months ago. That's not enough, obviously, for rent relief for people that were impacted. The reason I believe we don't have a number now, or we can announce a big package, again, because I believe that the governor was waiting to see what the federal government was going to give us in terms of a relief package. He didn't want to show his hand. He didn't want people to know what he had, because if he gives X, then the president will say, well, you have enough, we're not going to give you enough. There's just no way that when this moratorium is over, that we cannot come together with a package that probably will have to increase taxes on the wealthiest people in the state. When you have companies like Amazon that have their assets have increased, I believe, to the tune of $43 billion. When you have these insane amount of gains and profits of these companies, Amazon, that are benefiting because of COVID, right? They're making all their money. They're getting richer. But you have people that are so poor that they can't pay their rent. It's just unconscionable as a society to say, you're making all this money. You 1% control most of the wealth in this country. It is humane for you to put money so that people can live. If you put these people and you throw them out in the street, that will be a health disaster. There's not enough shelters here for people to live in shelters. So the consequence will be double to us as a society if people are allowed to, the people that cannot pay their rent.
I agree totally with this, but what I will say is don't need to be elected official come out and say something like this, or no eviction. I'm just saying eviction cannot happen by landlord. It happen by court. And when you go to court will look at the situation and they will take the decision accordingly. I know if a normal situation is not hard to get eviction. Eviction not easy in New York City. And during the COVID, there will be no eviction. But for me to come out and say voluntary, no eviction, it's just sending a mixed message. And now you're saying you want to protect but reduce the homelessness, but pushing this burden to the landlord's shoulder, is it fair? That's not their burden, it's the government burden.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's why we're saying that I think when people go into arrears, these individuals will have to go to social service programs to get help. The money that's going to come to give them the help going to come from the federal government or from us taxing the rich more. I have full trust that when we get to that dire situation, there will be a movement, there will be funding so that people can get some help. Look, the landlords may not get 100% of their rent, but many of them are going to get their rents. The thing is that we have to wait for November 4th to see in what direction we're going to be in.
Yeah, but I also see, how about as you compensating the tenant from anywhere, I didn't hear the elected officials saying that those landlords should be get a break on the real estate tax or the water bill.
Well, we did. Look, when we were passing legislation to protect tenants, the leader of the Senate, Senator Andrew Stewart Cousins from Yonkers, she assigns a working group from her 40 members in the Senate, from the 40 Democrats, to sit down in a room and hammer out ways to protect tenants. We spent 40 hours together. I was part of the group. Because of my real estate experience, the speaker always appoints me to these working groups that have to do with housing and rent. So one of the things that we were talking about, I specifically, for example, said that we should cancel, or have a moratorium on people that can't pay their water bills, landlords that get water bills, so that the water cannot be disconnected, so that they can have some level of forgiveness. Now, look, we're going to give the owners protection in the following way. If we get the federal monies to pay these tenants to pay their rent, they have arrears, it will go to the landlord, it will make up for the arrears, maybe not all of it, but there'll be some money coming to the landlords when we get to, everything here happens when you get to the crisis.
What are you talking is also, we're talking about the homelessness, and I want to discuss more details about the homeless situation. I know you try to reduce the homelessness, getting burden on landlord, but in also our district, your district, we have a homeless situation. We'll talk about it, but before that, we'll take a short break. Dear viewers, please stay with us. We are talking to hear Senator Luis Sepúlveda, and right after break, we'll talk more. Please stay with us. Thank you.
সাদাকা ফাউন্ডেশন ইউএসএ, মার্কিন যুক্তরাষ্ট্র ভিত্তিক সাহায্য সংস্থা, জাতি ধর্ম বর্ণ নির্বিশেষে বিপন্ন মানবতার পাশে সব সময়। করোনা মহামারীর এই দুর্যোগে 7 দিন 24 ঘন্টা আপনার পাশে আছে সাদাকা ফাউন্ডেশন। আপনিও সাথে থাকুন। হটলাইন নাম্বার 7182009222।
আপনি কি বয়স্ক পিতামাতা ও গুরুজনদের দৈনিক সেবা নিয়ে চিন্তিত? ভাববার কোনো কারণ নেই। সিনিয়র মাল্টি সার্ভিস ইনক আপনাকে দেবে বয়স্ক সেবার সকল সমাধান। আপনি কি বয়স্কদের সেবা করছেন? তাহলে আপনার সময়ের মূল্য হবে উপযুক্ত পারিশ্রমিক। SMS ইনক স্বল্প মূল্যে বাড়ির দৈনিক কাজকর্মে যে কোনো ধরনের বয়স্ক সেবা দিতে সদা প্রস্তুত। নিউ ইয়র্ক স্টেটের বয়স্ক ও অক্ষম বাসিন্দাদের আস্থা SMS ইনক এর পূর্ণ ব্যবস্থা। বিস্তারিত জানতে কল করুন 3477785252।
Dear viewers, please welcome back Friday Night Real Talk. We're here with Senator Luis Sepúlveda, also known as a Luis Bhai, Bangladeshi community. Everybody knows him. We're talking about the post-COVID situation in our community. We're talking about, right before the break, about the homeless situation. We're talking about the landlord, tenant being get awarded by the no eviction, government enforcement, and we also talk about how or what kind of help the landlord should get, who's mostly like a small landlord. But I want to ask Senator about the homelessness situation in your district. I know the District 18 and you're 43rd. Do you know how many
30 seconds.
30 seconds. I'm sorry, yeah, 30 seconds. How many homeless shelter in our area? I know it's between Assembly District and your city district.
The shelter that everyone talks about, the one on Westchester Avenue.
But I want to know how many shelter we have in our district, this area, already.
We have about, shelters are premised on the population of homeless people in the district. There are about 5,000 homeless people in this community. So within the confines of my district, most of them are in Westchester Square area. The one that, you have one on Zombie Avenue, you have about 3 or 4, but the one that's controversial is the one on Westchester Avenue by the library, across the street from the school. But that is not in my district. That is in another senator's district.
Yeah, even though,
But
I
I
know.
have people, I have family that works
You
there.
have your own Louisville district. You know what I
Yes.
mean by that? Even though your Senate district doesn't cover
Right.
me, but you cannot forget me because you work with your known community.
I work for the entire
So,
Bronx.
so I know that this our zone 11 or something, we have about more than 10 homeless shelter, and that's one was thrown on in addition to this. So my question is, there is a district in Riverdale, in Trogsnicks, and Pelham Garden, Pelham Bed. Maybe some district doesn't have a one shelter, some district have a two or none. So why we have enough and they want to put more? And what is your office? You've been an elected official between this Senate and state and assembly about more than maybe what 12 years?
Almost 10 years.
10 years. So what is your office doing or did in order to prevent the homelessness?
Well-
Why you need a home? Why the homeless generate?
Okay, well, homeless shelters are built where you have a large homeless population.
No, but that's why I'm saying why the homeless population comes. What is your office
There's a
did
lot
to
of-
reduce those?
There are a lot of reasons why you have homeless people. Some of the people are, about 43% of people that are homeless are children. And these are children who dad lost his job or mom lost her job, and they're no longer able to pay rent. So this idea that homeless people are criminals, or drug addicts, or prostitutes is just not true. Look, you have some elements of that, obviously, in homeless shelters. But when people start painting homeless people that way, I think about the 43% of kids that are homeless. There's a school across the street from my office where 38% of the kids there are homeless or live in a shelter and have to go to school. So what the city's policy is, and remember that when it comes to shelters, these are city policies. This is your city council people, not your state senate. It's a different, it's not my jurisdiction, but still it's in my district. So I want to make sure that I have notice. I want to make sure that all information about any shelter in my district is filtered down to me. But the shelters are built in areas where you have homeless populations. You don't have as many homeless people in other communities here. That's not to say that you should, if in case you have to have more, you should consider other areas. But some of the philosophy of the city is that if you have people that are homeless that have lived in that community before and now homeless, is it fair to take them and put them in other communities, or keep them in these communities where sometimes the kids have lived there, the families have lived there, and they want to keep them with that community? Now, there are different types of shelters. You have shelters that are for single mothers. You have shelters for people that may be suffering from mental illness. You have shelters for men that are working, men that are actively working but can't afford to pay rent. You have all kinds of shelters, and many of them provide services. If it's an issue with drugs, they provide drug treatment. So, for me, I prefer if these people that are homeless, if we work into a society where we can give them an apartment, right? We can help them maintain
So I'm
an
saying,
apartment.
is the affordable housing have anything to do with the reducing the?
Affordable housing can. The problem with affordable housing is the way the federal guidelines are set up. It's not always affordable. For affordable housing to be effective, it should be the area median income within that community. So people are poorer here, so their average income is going to be less than, let's say, people up in, let's say, Riverdale, for example, or Throgsneck, where the per capita income salaries are higher in those two areas. So for me, it's best to build housing for poor individuals, people who can't afford to pay the rent, and then put them on a path to be able to get a job and let them stay in their apartments. There are different experiments that go on in society, but shelter should be a temporary thing and move people on. So sometimes you have shelters for single men that they're required to be at work, and at some point they have to go off on their own and get their own apartment.
But this one particularly, not only single male shelter is also we call the sex offender, And
See,
they
that-
titled that way. We don't call anybody, and the whole community was really a little bit upset about it.
Yes.
And you, I think you have remained silent or been neutral, although
Well, I
some
wouldn't say I'm
elected
silent.
official.
I had a whole town hall event, so I wouldn't say I was silent.
Okay. Oh, yeah. I forgot
I
that.
was on
So,
the town, but here's the situation.
so you kind of like supported it,
No,
but your town hall was to
my
improve
town
the
was to
awareness.
provide information and awareness to individuals. As a general concept, I believe that housing is a constitutional right. Right? People should have a place to live, especially during this crisis.
Yeah,
And
you can.
we shouldn't think of homeless people as less than human. So as a concept, people should have a right. Now, where people have difficulties, if you have a shelter, well, we don't want it. And many people agree with me that everybody should have a right to live somewhere. But when it comes close to their house and it impacts their property values, then they have, they're not as forgiving. And I understand that, people have fear. Fear works great in our communities, and in every community, fear works. And then you get the misinformation. You cannot have a sex offender living there because it's near a school, near a library.
Yeah, but that's what we were told. It was a sex
yes.
offender, and they also have a certain hour to go out. And
Well, they have curfews, absolutely.
Yeah, they have a
should
curfew. So who
right.
have a curfew? No normal person. And we went to community board meeting, and I was there. You were there. I heard they
because I
tell all
think-
of the story about it.
Well, but that's because I think the curfew is to, perhaps it could be a little paternalistic, but it's just to get someone into a schedule, a worker who maybe wasn't as disciplined. So they know from this time to this time, they work, they go out, they come back and
But
go
that's alarm. There's a red flag for
Well,
somebody.
not necessarily, because you don't have necessarily, with these shelters, you don't have criminals living in there. And then the whole thing about child molesters or people that can commit violent crimes on children. When these people, when individuals are put in shelters like these, they are screened. And if they have these issues, they're not going to put them in a shelter by a school. And by the way, you have a house here in the Bronx.
I do.
Do you know that next door you could have a sexual offender who could be a level 1 offender?
I hope not.
Well, but only those, you can have offenders all around you. Only those offenders that have to register are the ones that you know about. But there's some that don't have to register. So you can, look, I remember a constituent of mine not even knowing that she had several, in one of her Parkchester buildings, that there were several sexual offenders living in a couple of the apartments. So we may not even know who's a predator if they're not required to register as sexual offenders. In these shelters, you're not going to have these people. They get screened and are not allowed to live there. They're very careful about it being a school. Now, in terms of building that shelter, opposition. Look, there was a lot of opposition. I talked to the mayor's offices. I don't like it because it's a busy street. It's a library. Kids coming out of school. When you have more population, it could create more traffic problems. And I talked to the mayor about that. But remember, when you build these shelters, the cities pick properties that they can build as a matter of right. What that means is that as long as the city is not violating any zoning laws, they can tell a developer or a developer can say, I'll build a shelter, rent it, and build it, and then have a social service not-for-profit agency run it. There's nothing you can do to stop that, because the city as a matter of right, can allow that development. There was a shelter that was built in what they call Billionaires Row in the city. This is like one of the richest 4-block areas in the city of New York. And they brought a litigation, they brought a court case to stop it, and they couldn't, because it was built as a matter of right. So people who see that shelter there on Westchester Avenue, excuse me, there's really, the only person that could potentially stop it is, if the developer goes bankrupt or the city pulls the funding. But other than that, there was nothing that any of us can do to stop that. Now, I was resentful that we got the information, at least my office did, got the information later. Other offices got it a little sooner because it's with the city. I don't deal directly with the city.
Anyway, so this is already actually executed and it's open, and so I'm sure that it doesn't. I know the mayor maybe not agree with us, and maybe like you say, we have people cannot maybe achieve it, but still you have right to express your feelings and opinion.
Yes.
At least it's work for the future thing. I have a very other important issue,
Yes.
so I want to move a little bit faster because
Okay.
look, just like 6 months ago, something very real. The New York City, I believe, they eliminate the cash bail system. Something is talking in the media big about called bail reform, and I want to give a little bit of hint about police department and DA office criticizing against it, and this has been the two reform, I believe. I'm not sure. You're going to explain to me what is the really bail reform mean, how that affect us, and why the New York City police saying this increasing the crime, and why the arrest is so high now. Even the people who were released without the bail, they were immediately arrested back. It's a lot of data I have. I don't want to go read over here, take a time. I'm sure you know that. And mostly I'm going to say the new law, this new, whatever was the bail reform, is say 25 types of crime will eligible to get bail, allow the bail, which was not before, including second degree burglary and other crime which result someone death. And also some other thing, there's a minor thing, you cannot get a bail, but there's things happen because of this law. Some drunk driver was get bail after striking someone, and someone also killed Omen, and they also get bail because of this. Anyway, I think if I want to give you more details, it's going to too much. I hope you understand because this bail reform is really, and we don't want to kill our beautiful city. We already see after the pandemic, the crime is spiking more than the COVID-19.
Well, the first thing I'll tell you is that the commissioner's own data failed to prove his fear-mongering theory that bail reform increased crime in the city. It's just not the truth.
According to who?
According to the police commissioner's own statistics. There was a story written, I believe it was in the Daily News of the Times, where they articulated the fact that essentially the police commissioner was fear-mongering because his own data demonstrated that it had no criteria, no connection between that. Now, the problem that we have as a society is what we think about what bail should be and what bail is supposed to be. So bail is supposed to be, our criminal justice system is not supposed to be premised on who's wealthy, who's not. So let's say that you commit a criminal offense, that in the past you had $1,000 bail set on you by a judge. But you're a successful businessman, you have money, you pay your $1,000, you get home. But me, who's a poor person, I cannot pay that bail. Guess where I go? I go to the jail. So where you have a fundamental problem with that, where the kind of justice you get and treatment you get within the system is based on the amount of money that you have. I have a problem with that. Everyone should be treated equally.
So bail should have something, right?
Well, there are some offenses that we outlined, because I was part of that subgroup also on criminal justice reform, where we said, look, there's some elements of violence that perhaps you should include them. But remember, bail was not supposed to, was never meant as a way to incarcerate people. Bail was meant to make sure you came back. We're not supposed to hold people pre-trial in prison before they actually have their day in court. This is how you got a lot of plea bargain, because people got sick of being in prison, in the holding cells, and they would plea bargain. Even though they were innocent, they would plead guilty. Bail is to make sure you come back. It's not to put people, it's not a quasi-jurisdictional function. It's not for people to be held in prison because they can't afford to pay bail. So when you have a system that's fair, then we can talk. But right now, the system, the way it was prior to our reforms, was unfair to poor and black and brown people.
Thank you for that. I'm sure, but we have to watch out. When our police department show the worry and saying the crime is going up and it's causing
But the police departments always say crime is going up. Look, we still have, even with everything that's going on, we still have record low crime in the city of New York. And there was a spike in gun violence, because when you have a lot of unrest, that usually happens. It happened in Missouri when they had their violence. But once everything simmers down, you go back to the rates. And in fact, this past month, the level of crime violence was equal to it was last year, long before COVID. So things are starting to stabilize again, and they will.
All right, moving forward, thank you. I appreciate it. So you have sponsored a bill jointly with Linda Rosenthal.
Yes.
She's an assemblywoman?
That's correct.
And you won, or you proposed your bill saying the animal market, live animal market should be shut down, and you want scientific community or conservation expert. I'm not sure what does it mean. Should be determined whether this live market should be keep going or not.
Correct.
My question is that this live market have a lot to do with the religious community.
Yes.
So I don't know why you don't include the cleric group or religious community with this group to determine that it should be safe or not, and also why you propose to shut down instead of just fix it and determine what needs to be done and how to regulate it.
Well, your first question, I'm sorry, repeat the first question because you asked me the second one. I was going to answer both. What was the first part of your question? The first part of your question, can you repeat it? Can you repeat the first part of the question?
Well,
because you asked me two compound questions.
Well, my question is that you don't include the cleric.
All right. So first of all, let's understand when that bill was proposed. This is at the beginning of COVID. Now, the COVID virus is what's called a zoonotic virus. Zoonotic viruses are passed on from animal to human. I did a thorough review. We had a Freedom of Information bill that we got from the Department of Health to look at any violations that some of these halal businesses or meat markets or live markets had on their premises. I haven't displayed what I got, but I can tell you that if some of the people in the Muslim community, let's say for example, because it's also the Hasidim community and Latinos, they love the markets. If I disclose or if anybody received this information about some of these establishments, you would not buy meat from there. We're talking about roach droppings. We're talking about feathers on the floor for days. We're talking about really unsanitary, unhealthy conditions. You're talking about animals that have been killed with feces thrown into baskets and left there for a long period of time. That is a breeding ground for zoonotic viruses. And so when I looked at what I saw and I saw the possibility that we can have another coronavirus type of spread or type of a new zoonotic virus starting here, then I said, I have to protect the community that I represent that relies a lot on these live markets. Part of the bill, as a discussion, I've had discussions with both the religious Jewish community, the Muslim community, and Latino community. And one of the amendments that I'm proposing to the bill is to include, as part of this committee, members of the faith-based organizations like the Muslim community and the Jewish community. So that bill is going to be amended to include people from the faith-based community to be part of the committee. I said that quite a few months ago, but we haven't done it yet because we're at a slowdown because of coronavirus. We haven't had session. So I agree with you that absolutely there should be members of the, maybe an imam or someone like that.
Yeah, there is a misconception already. People think that you're trying to stop halal food.
No, and then what we said was, let us put a pause on those that are there now that have been troublesome, and there are many violations, until this committee of professionals, health professionals, religious people can come up with policies that will permit us to have them open. So the bill was never proposed to summarily close halal markets, but if a halal market is operating in unsanitary conditions, they should be closed right away because they can lead not just as an
that's a pure violation. They should follow the guidelines.
Right, but the problem is that we don't have very many inspectors that go out. It's Department of Agriculture. It's not like you have weekly inspections. They get inspected maybe 2 or 3 times a year, and a lot can happen in between. And you know what else is interesting, Najrubai, is that many of the residents that live around those areas don't want them there. They don't like the odor. They don't like the blood on the streets. They don't like the feather on the streets. So people in the community, when I speak with them, generally speaking, are not happy with them. So, I have to look at the interests of the community. I have to make sure that you have safe and sanitary conditions for people in my community to go and buy meats from there. You have to look at all these things to make sure that you protect the community. But the bill that I'm proposing, that's been proposed, it's not 100% the way it's going to be probably at the end, but certainly it's going to be more inclusive of the faith community.
So, as we kind of I understand you're saying. I hope that you include our cleric and imam,
yes,
from Muslim communities, so we understand the problem,
yes,
and we want to be part of the problem. I'm sure.
Absolutely.
Want to switch it a little bit. Let's talk about real stuff. The election.
Yes.
You know what about your election, I believe.
No, I don't.
So
I think I'll be able to.
I have a interesting question here for you from the Facebook.
Yes.
Saying if counting as a true friend of Bangladeshi community.
Yes.
So how you will support or help, or how you want to see any Bangladeshi candidate who's running for around your district. I don't mean, when I say district, you mean the Pakistan community, Bronze community.
Mm-hmm.
So what is your what kind of support you have for every Bangladeshi community who we're looking for a candidate? So anybody who running from Bangladeshi community can count on you.
Well, I don't.
That's actually a question. I just don't.
It's a fair question.
I cannot do the
It's
good
a very
phrasing.
fair question. I don't support candidates simply because they're, let's say, Latino or African American or any nationality. I support candidates in my community that I think are qualified, have roots in the community, care about the community. There's certain metrics that I have. But I can't say I'm going to support this person because he's Dominican or Puerto Rican or he's African American or Bengali. Now, I don't know of any particular candidate that's running for any office in my area. There are rumors, of course, but to be a candidate, there's several major steps that you have to take. You have to collect signatures, you have to qualify, you have to open up an account, you have to raise money. There's certain things that you have to do. You have to go knocking on doors. It's a long, arduous process.
Yeah, but you've been endorsing other candidates in the past. You are allowed to endorse another candidate.
Candidates that I believe.
Okay, you believe, yes.
Have the metrics. Now, I've heard a couple of names in the Bengali community, and I'll be honest with you, I don't think that the names that I've heard are people that I would support. So I would love to see, I've done my part to bring up more Bangladeshi Americans into the political process. I've run in positions that you usually start and move up, and then like I did, I was once a state committeeman, a district leader. I ran all those positions, assembly, then I became to the Senate. So, it's a process that you have to get involved in, and it's, I believe that the first...
You're allowed to appoint a lot of people in the county committee, right?
I put a lot of people in the community.
Do you have ever appointed any Bangladeshi from our community to county committee?
Oh, I think I probably put more than any other candidate in the Bronx. Absolutely. At one time I ran 27.
We're very close to the show. I want to move something that I don't know how long ago, but it's been probably a year ago. You have visited Bangladesh. My question to you, since then I never have a chance to formally talk with you.
Yes.
I want to know what makes you go there, what you did, what is your experience, if you can wrap it up,
Sure.
More you can tell us, your any bad experience and good experience.
No, I absolutely loved the country. It was hot. I met members of,
What was the main reason you go there?
Well, we have a population, I have a very large population of Bangladeshi Americans who have a very strong relationship with the mother country. I have met government officials of Bangladesh. Myself and 4 of the state senators went there because we wanted to develop ties. We want to bring back programs, exchange programs, and we were working on some of these things. We met leaders of industry, the garment industry. They came after our visit. A family that has one of the largest garment factories in Bangladesh came to Albany, and we were working about seeing if we can work out some kind of relationship between the state, between the Bronx. We were establishing student exchanges, but everything was halted because of COVID. So we did a lot of cultural exchanges, and to me, it's important to get a personal view of the country so that I can understand better a lot of the important issues. And then the other thing was that, I've read a lot about the Rohingya camps. I've seen the incredible sacrifice that Bangladesh has made to protect thousands of Rohingyas from murder. I think that the country of Bangladesh should be applauded and praised for such a vast humanitarian mission. I was very proud of I was very surprised by what I saw, but I saw that the effort was made to feed so many people, to clothe so many people.
You visited the camp?
I visited the camp. I was at Cox's Bazar, and that was one of the most incredible experiences I've had as a legislator, as a government person. I mean, to see so many people bunched up together and
so you feel warm welcome by the official and the people?
Everybody was fantastic. In fact, we were planning a trip this year, but again, COVID hit. So next year we'll be returning to Bangladesh.
Thank you, Ms. Senator. Thank you for your time. It was been pleasure. You have shared so many information. Thank you, viewers. We discussed today our community's issues with our guest, Senator Sepúlveda, also known as Louis Bai. He just explained his experience with the Bangladesh visited last year. We learned from him that even though he proposed a bill to for the halal market to be need to monitors, but he will include the cleric from Muslim community. So this way we can play a role according to our religious faith. Also, he talk about how you can help the landlord, not only the tenant. He also talk about how we can get resolve the homeless situation, and also he say he'll support the Bangladesh community as they continue. So thank you for listening. Thank you for staying with us. Please, until the next Friday, everyone stay tuned and keep watching the channel TT.TV, channel TT.TV. We're also on the Facebook and YouTube. And remind you before you go, this show was brought to you by Senior Multi-Service. So Senior Multi-Service is our community organization really helping all our seniors. So please don't forget to call them 347-778-5252. Thank you. See you next week.
Don't forget.